Hello, hello, hello. Two people in the house. I could probably guess who one of them is. Someone who's always here but never says anything. How are we doing, people? As always, just waiting for the chat to fill up a little bit. Hopefully, it shouldn't take too long. And get the show on the road and talk some boxing. Okay. No particular topic for today's live stream, people. Just whatever topics arise. I think let me get some talking started. Some boxing scene, see what headlines there are. Okay. Okay, even the boxing news is looking a bit dry these days. Yeah, more websites. So yeah, as people coming through, um, just going to yeah. All right, so I got some stuff ready. All right, first question from Andrew. Big up, good to have you here, Andrew. AJ going with Roy Jones Jr. I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, I feel the same. I haven't looked into that whole uh, situation, if you can even call it a situation. I guess it was a meeting of sorts between the two. Yeah, from a stylistic point of view, I can't say I'd see Roy being a good fit for AJ, to be honest. Um, I, I still kind of think that Roy's a bit of a sketchy fit for Eubank Jr. For me, the jury's still out in regards to Roy's ability as a trainer, because yeah, he was a phenomenal fighter and a generational, legendary status fighter. But that, I mean, we know by now it doesn't always translate over to being a trainer and coaching a fighter. So yeah, as I say, the jury's still out. I'm not writing Jones off as a trainer, but I just, I need to see more. In regards to AJ, I don't know. I was planning to do a video about that whole thing because everything with AJ now just seems to be up in the air. It seems like he was supposed to fight at the end of this year, but now it's being pushed back to as late as March next year. Okay, so that's not good. But now there's this whole thing with his training setup. Who's going to be training him? Because he's no longer working exclusive. I mean, he was never working exclusively with Robert Garcia, but it seems like even that relationship's gone out the window for now, or it's at least put on pause. And this is so much instability surrounding Joshua's career. And that's really the last thing you want if you're Joshua and you're in his position, coming off of back-to-back losses, having a little bit of a meltdown in the ring after the Usyk fight. He needs stability now. And stability doesn't mean being treated with kid gloves. It just means consistency, being stable, being something being regulated, being a regular fitting. Because how can you how can you expect to progress if there's no consistency? If you look at anything in life, but especially sport, and getting better, getting technically better, getting fitter, quote unquote, there's no progression without consistency. And progression is what you need to become a better athlete and a better fighter. So no consistency, no progression, forget about getting better. That's just the long and the short of it. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Um, yeah, AJ, what do you guys think? Yeah, it's not just about what I think. You guys are obviously part of the stream too. What do you think about AJ? Say if he did team up with Roy Jones and it was formally announced Roy Jones Jr. is going to be training AJ for the foreseeable future, what would you make of it? Let me know. TMT in the house as always. Good to have you here, buddy. No work tomorrow in France. I guess November the 11th, an off day in the UK. Also, not that I know of. No, UK tomorrow's Friday the 11th. Very much a normal working day for everyone. um, Interesting you say that. TMT, you from France? Um, if so, whereabouts? Be interesting to know. All right, we're still not even 10 minutes in. Got a few of you guys tuning in. Uh, I have put the link into the Element group, so maybe we'll get some other guys joining. Yeah. How are we doing, people? How are we doing? Are we having a good week? Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. Okay. All right, TMT. So you commemorate the end of World War One. All right, that makes sense. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what kind of holidays we have here. I lose track because the thing is, it's like unless you, here there are a lot of school holidays. Like there are holidays that really only affect schools and stuff like that, and I lose track of them. As soon as you leave the education system, you kind of just lose track of these public holidays and whatnot. So yeah, to be honest, I really just go by my university schedule, and that's so skewed because I think bank holidays that we have in this country, I kind of miss them all because I'm not at university anyway. University hit over here, I'm done in like the first week of May, and then I don't go back until the first week of October. So yeah, super long time off, and therefore the holidays don't really apply to me that much. I lose track. I'm just going to mute myself, people, just while I adjust myself, get comfortable. All right, I'm back. Yeah, um, still my bedroom isn't very well optimized to live streaming, so I'm always trying to find a comfortable position. But I think I found one for now. Um, yeah, uni ends very early. Yeah, it does. That's partly why I started my channel actually, because obviously I started it at the end of like mid-April last year, and sorry, I just didn't mean to blow into the mic. I was thinking, I'm going to have such a long summer holiday, and I want a project to work on. Ended up creating this channel pretty much just in a day. Just came up with a name, came up with a logo, and an intro, and started making videos. That was on a Saturday. Made my first video the next day on the Sunday, and here we are. Thanks to you guys, you beautiful people, subscribing, liking, commenting, you keeping this channel afloat. So I owe a lot to you guys. Andrew, what am I studying? So I am studying sport and exercise science, and I'm currently in my last year. I've been at university for 3 years, so I'm in the on the home stretch now, the last little sprint. Because, as I say, by next May, I'm going to be putting this project to bed. This 4 year long project of going through university education. So yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it a few times on the channel that I study sport and exercise science. So like, yeah, this is a boxing channel, but if we're on a live stream and there's nothing too much to talk about, If you guys have any like training related questions, anything sports science based, any kind of exercise questions, all that stuff, because um, I'm very much in strength and conditioning, which people seem to be quite interested in these days. A lot of sports are picking it up. Boxing is picking it up, and I know there are some kind of mixed feelings about that. Um, so yeah, if you guys have any questions like that, I'm in quite a privileged position. I'll say that because I get to work not directly with, but alongside. So I guess that is kind of with a lot of fairly big names. Um, so yeah, any questions? I'm actually well, it's one person who is fighting for a world title or is involved in a world title fight this this weekend. I've pretty much been with them for the past month, maybe 5 weeks, even 5 or 6 weeks, seeing them day in day well on a weekly basis. So yeah, I've only kind of really just settled down into it. I'm already meeting a lot of people. Um, Andrew, first question. And as I say, if it's not boxing related, still just drop it in. I like talking about training and stuff. So if you guys have anything you're wondering about. Um, so Andrew asks, does lifting weights burn fat better than running? Now, this is a good question because there is a bit of a movement in the fitness sphere about kind of demonizing cardio, quote unquote, cardiovascular activity, running, jogging, swimming, that kind of stuff. Your more aerobic based, non resistance training exercise modalities. And I don't think it's as cut and dry as one's better than the other. I really see them serving a better function than that. But I think we have to address the question in terms of what you're trying to achieve, because that's ultimately your direction, that's your goal. It's going to determine how you get there. So, burning fat, you know, reducing your body fat percentage, that really comes down to creating um, a negative energy balance, which sounds intimidating, but it's really not. All a negative energy balance is, or all it consists of, is using more energy than you consume. And that's a multifaceted thing, but for the most part, into daily life, that translates to eating less and moving more, essentially. That's generally how people would address it. Um, Obviously, there is some wiggle room. You don't necessarily have to eat less, but sometimes it's really about calories. Consume less calories than you expend, and then you're going to kind of look at it on the basis of, um, all right, uh, I have these two exercise modalities. I have lifting weights, I have resistance training, and then I have aerobic training. I think for the most part, aerobic training is generally going to be something that you're able to sustain for longer, and therefore it kind of by default burns more calories. So I guess you could say it contributes slightly more towards that energy expenditure. But it comes down to the modality at the end of the day. Obviously, if you're doing a bunch of isolation work like bicep curls, tricep extensions, which has its value, but it's not going to be very taxing on the system. It's not going to require much energy compared to going and doing a 5K. There's a pretty big difference, but proportionally, I think it's generally in favor of the running, the aerobic training. But there's some interesting scientific, if you want to call it that, perspectives. So, lifting weights, resistance training is a good way to increase your muscle mass. And now, muscles are metabolic tissue. They're much more metabolically active than fat tissue or fat cells, your adipose body tissue. So, because it's more metabolically active, it contributes more to your energy expenditure. And therefore, you can kind of see lifting weights and gaining muscle as a long term investment to increasing your energy expenditure and contribute more to lowering your body fat percentage. But then if you look at aerobic exercise, I did some work on this time last year where I was measuring in the sports labs the amount of fat that is oxidized relative to your exercise intensity. And basically, the lower your intensity in terms of what percentage of your maximum heart rate you're working at, the lower that percentage is, the more fat you oxidize. And it's essentially because your body has time to use that fat. But as soon as the intensity goes up, your the energy demands of that activity becomes so much higher that your body, it needs energy quickly, so it starts to use glycogen from the muscles, which is essentially the stored energy substrate in the muscle. Whereas at lower intensities, your blood is, I'm describing it very crudely, but your blood is able to flow through um, the fat essentially and use fat as energy. This isn't a scientific description at all, but putting it in layman's terms. So there's value in both of them. Um, if you enjoy both, do both. It's really that simple. If you prefer to lift weights and you want to avoid cardio, you can still get lean, but then there's going to be even more of an emphasis on your nutrition. But you should really look to dial your nutrition in anyway. I hope that makes sense. It's a pretty long answer, but it is a multifaceted uh, approach. You know, it's something that you should attack from all angles rather than putting all your eggs into one strategy. So address your nutrition, lift weights, and do any kind of cardiovascular activity. It doesn't even have to be dedicated. You could walk more, you could go swimming, you could play a game. Like I love playing table tennis. You know, that's I'm not particularly good at it, but I can play it for ages. Whereas I'm sick of running 5Ks, going over to the park. I did that plenty when I was still boxing. So, but then even that, if you don't like running, you prefer to hit a bag, do it. And that kind of leads on to the next question that TMT asks. But Andrew, no, it's not Natasha Jonas. It's not her. It's not the Space Raider. It's not Jonas. TMT asks, do you have any exercise to strengthen the hands and the wrists, like muscles and tendons, without putting too much pressure on the bones? Um, you could, I guess, in a roundabout way, you can strengthen the muscles of the forearm. That's going to typically be a good way to go. The muscles of the forearm, so doing wrist flexion, like the standard bodybuilder wrist curls, that kind of isolation work is a good way to build up the muscle tissue. And a lot of people, not just in boxing, but quite a few, it's quite prevalent in boxing that they hold the belief that muscle gain is bad, like just inherently, like you should never train for hypertrophy and to grow your muscles because it's a waste of time. It's only going to be deleterious to your performance. It's really not the case. It's not black and white, shades of gray. And for the most part, a muscle that has been hypertrophied is not only stronger because the contractile fibers are bigger. Bigger means more generally. A bigger muscle can can produce more force, but a bigger muscle is also able to potentially withstand higher forces. And so, if you're looking at someone like the wrist, where if it's not very stable, strengthening the muscles around it can help to really fortify that joint. You can also do grip training too. That's something to really strengthen the fingers. You see a lot of rock climbers, they do a lot of finger strengthening, and you just look at their arms and they're massive, and the lower arm is so fortified against injury because it's really robust. It's had a lot of stimulus. It's been because that's all resistance training is. It's learning to deal with the forces that a resistance imposes on you. So that's all you're really doing. You're training your body, you're training your tissues to deal with that force And at the end of the day, what is boxing? It's a sport. What does sport consist of? Movements. And what do movements involve? Force. So, yeah, TMT, this is by no means a definitive answer, but try some forearm curls, silly bodybuilder moves, I know, but there's a lot of value in them. Try some finger training in terms of learning to um, grip with the fingers and really train the muscles of the hands and the forearms. Interesting bit of anatomy a lot of people don't realize. The uh, fingers, there's not that much muscle relatively in the hands. A lot of the muscles that control the fingers are actually higher up in the forearm. That's why if you wiggle your fingers, you see a lot of um, striations. You see a lot of movement in the upper arm near the elbow, and it's almost like your fingers are really remote controlled almost, because the tendon that inserts at the top of the fingertip, it really runs the length of your hand into your wrist and then your forearm, and the muscles control them from a distance. But that kind of stuff, wrist training, finger training, grip training in general, can really train you to fortify that area, make it really stiff and rigid. But also, if this is if this if this training is uh, maybe a solution, and you're trying to improve your punching and the stability of your wrist, all that stuff needs to be done in conjunction with practicing your punching. And one thing I recommend for that is get some bag mitts, not bag gloves, bag mitts, which are basically like 4-ounce gloves. So they essentially just cover your hands and they have a tiny bit of padding. Those are good. Use those on the heavy bag because they can train you to really make a fist and get used to uh, basically improving the timing of when you make a fist relative to when you hit the bag, because it's quite important. It's quite an overlooked uh, technique, if you will. A lot of guys wear these massive boxing gloves and they can't actually make a fist. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, TMT. Check those things out and report back. Try it for a bit and let me know how it goes. It's going to be interesting to hear what kind of progress you make. All right, we've got 7 people in the chat. A little bit of a quiet one, but we've only been going for less than half an hour. Right, bear with me, guys. I'm just going to get a sip of water. And I'm back in the room. TMT, you're very welcome, my man. Thank you for pretty much joining every live stream. You're here without fail. So thank you. We've got Joe Stunner in the house. I'm all right, Joe. I'm all right. I can't complain. I'm just so flipping tired all the time, man. Busy, busy, busy. Um, but I'm doing well, Joe. How are you? How's your week going? Uh, Eddie Rose. Don't think I've seen that name before. So welcome to the channel, my friend. Welcome to the live stream. White versus a collie. Who wins? Oh, that's um, that's an interesting question. You know what? I wouldn't discount a collie's chances of beating White. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but a couple of years ago, White and a collie kind of had a little bit of a back and forth. And on Twitter, a collie released a short clip, a short sparring clip of him in the ring with Dylan White at Miguel's gym in Brixton. And Okolie was holding his own. He was actually making White look a little bit silly. And look, it was a short clip. I think it might have been 30 seconds tops, maybe even less than that. Um, and sparring, strange things happen in sparring. Like if White's just sparred 10 rounds and Okolie's jumping in for the last 2 and he's fresh, like it's going to look a certain way. But a collie, I think at this point, he's, a collie's got a certain swagger about him now. He seems to have found a groove where, look, he's still not given us fight of the year contenders in terms of the entertainment value of his fights, but he's, I feel like he's established now. He's a legit puncher, developing nicely in the skills department, has a lot of confidence, and White, he's kind of at rock bottom now because the Povetkin knockout, which was obviously over 2 years ago, it wasn't a good look. But then he was able to come back a matter of months later and rectify it and prove it was one punch. Um, and at the end of the day, getting knocked out by Povetkin, there's no shame in that. Povetkin's an amazing fighter, great power, great skills. Um, Dylan White made a mistake, got caught. But with this Fury knockout, it was that's a different ball game because firstly, White had no success. Not, I don't remember White landing a meaningful punch on Fury. I just don't remember. So it was round after round after round of no success, and then he gets flattened. And on top of that, he doesn't have the chance to get any kind of revenge. And not that I'd expect him to, um, not that I'd expect him to beat Fury in a rematch. Far from it. But you have to imagine that that has taken a bit more of a toll on White, not only physically but mentally. And I suspect that as Felix says, and big up to Felix. White's chin is there's a big question mark by it because White, he's one of these guys who has a go hard or go home mentality in everything. In boxing, that only gets you so far. And when you're sparring multiple rounds on multiple days, that go hard or go home attitude it's gonna cost you your career and your health. And I feel like that's what we're starting to see in White. So I don't know. Maybe I'd favour a collie because I believe a collie's taller than Dylan White. I've seen a collie up close a few times, and he's a legit 6'5". I've seen White in person, but from a distance, I couldn't really gauge his height. But I definitely I think a collie's taller, longer reach. I don't think so because White's got those go-go gadget arms. It'd be a good fight, you know. I know it's a cruiserweight versus a heavyweight, but a collie punches like a heavyweight. I've heard his punches up close, and it's not cruiserweight power. I tell you that. Joe Stunner, the dark evenings don't help. Doing okay. What do you think about the Galal Yafai performance at the weekend? Yeah, those dark evenings. I swear it gets to 3:30, 3:30, and that's it. It's time for bed. But it's good to hear that you're doing okay, Joe. The Galal Yafai performance, I have to be honest, I didn't see it. The Yafai brothers, they struggle to catch my attention. I'll say that. But Joe, if you're recommending it, I'll check it out. I have such little time these days that you guys need to recommend stuff to me. If you think it's worth watching, I'll watch it. Other than that, I just can't find time to go out of my way to see if it's worth watching. But yeah, how did it go down, Joe? Because was it Galal and Cal? Did they fight on the same card? Was that the Bivol card? Bivol Ramirez? Let me know. TMT. I've forgotten about Collie. Is he at Sky now? To be honest, I don't think there's been an announcement. I don't think he's settled down, but the last thing I heard was he wasn't. It didn't seem like he was on the best terms with Hearn and Matchroom. So who knows, to be honest. But regardless of who he's with, he needs to fight. He can't fall into this trap of, okay, I'm a champion now. I'm going to fight twice a year most. Like that's because you see that with a lot of the American fighters, like the PBC fighters. Like, what's happened to Jamal Charlo? Guys like him, they hardly fight, and they're champions. It's quite annoying, quite irritating. Um, Felix White won't just let Okolie hold on though, and he got KO'd by Savon. Has Okolie been there with a big puncher? Well, Savon's a big puncher. You know, I know he's an amateur, but he's regarded as a pretty good puncher. Um, and yeah, I agree. You know, White's not going to just let Okolie bully him. I imagine that White probably has a decent amount of strength to keep up with Okolie. But it's just, I'm thinking about the limitations of White, not only punch resistance, but just stylistically. Um, Maybe we're all selling White a bit short. Maybe he just needs a bit of time out of the ring. Maybe he comes back against Franklin and look good. But even that, you know, Franklin, I know he's an unknown quantity, but don't be surprised if White's getting put down by Jermaine Franklin. Like, don't be surprised because his chin, I think it's in tatters right now. Um, so, uh, yeah, I'm not saying I'd pick Okolie with confidence, but I'd give him a good chance. I'd give him a good chance for sure. But there's a lot of unknown surrounding White. TMT, he let Povetkin and White hit him with their biggest power, though saw nothing, and they had full leverage on uppercuts. You say he let Povetkin and White. Oh, Povetkin and Fury, right? Yeah. Um, yeah, that's true. That's true. But see, the thing is, it's with White, it seems to be a thing. You know, he's been put down so many times with uppercuts. I think maybe there's just some susceptibility, but you know, Hatman points out as well. If you look at White in the Joshua fight, he took a lot of big shots, flush shots, and Joshua was winding them up. And it was only when it got to the seventh round when White got KO'd. And if you just looked at him, he was exhausted. But those were punches that he'd taken earlier in the fight. And then that was in December 2015. If you fast forward a year, he's having that back and forth war with War Chisora, and he took a lot of flush punches there. And then uh what was his I'm trying to think of his next major fight after that. 2017. Um oh, I think he only fought Malcolm Tan, but then he had that fight with Parker, got put down. Um Fight with Chisora. Yeah, he didn't ship as much punishment as he did in the first fight, but you know, it was still a little bit rough. But then goes in against Rivas, gets put down. And so it all adds up. And then by Dylan White's own admission, and you kind of see these things like he spars like a madman. And it's gonna take its toll on you sooner or later. But yeah, I do agree. Like him getting knocked out by those punches, I think more so the Povetkin knockout. The Povetkin knockout was the kind of shot that would knock most heavyweights out. With the Fury punch, though, that uppercut, Fury timed it perfectly, but it could have been better. I don't think he had his best leverage, but you know, Fury's a big man. You know, 6 foot, whatever, 270 pounds. You know, that's not going to tickle. Right, Joe. The reason I mention it is because a lot of people think Yafai lost in only his third pro fight. He was largely exposed. Not a good look for one of DAZN's new stars. Yeah, you know, one thing that I've never, or one of the gripes I have with UK boxing is they really put the amateurs on a pedestal, and it's even though like Galal Yafai, I can't speak on him too tough because I haven't watched him that closely, but it's sometimes it's just a bit much, and it's like all right, he was a decent amateur, but that doesn't necessarily mean that much going into the pros. Not these days, anyway, and probably not in the you know yesteryear. But I'll check it out then. I'll check it out. But to be honest, I think it just depends where you're looking at because, say, for example, in my opinion, I don't rate any of the Yafais pretty highly. So I could watch the fight and think, oh yeah, I thought this was going to happen earlier. So I'll see. I'll definitely check it out though. But yeah, you talk about not a good look for one of DAZN's new stars. DAZN is it's under the cosh right now. It's really feeling the heat. I think it's fair to say. Felix, how well do you think Savon would have done at cruiserweight and heavyweight? Um, yeah, I think he would have enjoyed some decent success. Historically, though, Cuban heavyweights who have turned over to to professional boxing, they haven't done that well. Um, I think some recent names. You have uh, Frank Sanchez. I think he's doing pretty well for himself. I think he's listed at 27. Add another 10 years on, and I think you'll be in the right ballpark. But age discrepancy aside, I think he's a good fighter and has some. I'd pick Frank Sanchez over a lot of guys. I think he's going to spring some upsets that people don't see coming. Well, obviously, they won't see him coming because they're upsets. But yeah, I think Sanchez has got some big nights in his future. Luis Ortiz, been around for a while. You kind of know what you get with Ortiz. Is he one of the premier heavyweights? Nah, he's like a top 10 on his day kind of guy. Looked really good back in 2015 when he dealt with Bryant Jennings, but didn't really do much after that. And that's really his best win, Bryant Jennings. I thought that Ruiz beat him. Um, yeah. Ortiz, yeah, good fighter, but is he top tier, elite tier heavyweight? Nah, not in my book. Go back a few years ago, you got Mike Perez, who's cruiserweight now, but started heavyweight. I like Mike Perez. I like his style. You can see a lot of the natural talent and the experience, but fights very, doesn't fight regularly at all. Had a shaky start to his career because he was a fat heavyweight. Mike Perez is like, what, 5'11", very muscular build, but he just had a load of fat on top of it. Got splattered by Povetkin back in early 2014. But I think a lot of that played, a lot of the Magomed Abdusalamov fight, I think a lot of that played on Perez's mind. Not that I think if that had been avoided, I don't think he would have gone on to have that much great success at heavyweight. But I still like Perez. I think he's a good fighter. I just wish that he'd fight the better guys. I think he's fighting Tishenko this month, I believe. Yeah, I like Mike Perez. Other Cuban heavyweights or cruiserweights, you got some in the from the past. Jorge Luis Gonzalez, Odlenes Elise, a bit more recent. So, and I think I see Savon as being quite a bit more talented than them. I think he's naturally bigger than all of them in terms of stature and height. So, yeah, I'd give Savon a good chance of maybe not being a champion, but being a good fighter. But see, the thing is, not so much with the heavyweight fighters, the heavyweight Cubans, but the lighter Cubans. They spend so long in the amateurs, they don't really know how to adapt to the pros. And it's one thing that's always bugged me is when you have the likes of Erislandi Lara and sometimes Rigo and hey, right, we got to block some people. Don't want any of that. Yeah. Um yeah, so mostly the lightweight fighters like those two in particular. And they can be in some real stinkers where it's not defensive boxing, it is running. And look, I liked both of those guys. I watched plenty of their fights. I gave them their credit, but sometimes they put in performances where they showed that they had no intention to engage. And it's like, oh, the boxing establishment is biased against Cuban fighters because we're such effective boxers. That's not effective boxing. That's running. It's so it just gets so much running. But it wasn't all the time. Like both of those guys put in good performances. Both Rigo and Erislendi Lara, but it really started to grind my gears. The whole, oh, we're Cuban and they hate us because X, Y, Z, so they don't give us credit when like I'm not going to get into it, but yeah. So I'm waffling now as well. Savon, I think he would have enjoyed quite a bit of success. Not necessarily champion, but he gets some good wins. Joe, what's your view of Fraser Clark? Do you think he can go far in the pros? For me, jury's still very much up. Yeah, I agree. I haven't seen anything from him that's blown me away. I'm in the same boat as you. The jury's still out, and I think, I don't. Maybe this is a little bit short-sighted of me to say this, but I think when you're on Team GB and you're kind of playing second fiddle to Joe Joyce, who's playing second fiddle to Anthony Joshua, it really goes to show that you're probably not going to reach the same heights as them. But Fraser Clark, he comes across as an all right guy, so I'm not gonna like diss him or anything. That's not what I'm interested in. But I think that probably speaks for itself. And obviously that's the amateurs. But how old is Fraser Clark? Is he like 34 or something? Let's check, because I don't think he's not a spring chicken. Oh, he's 31, and what, he's been pro for a year? Not even that. No, he turned pro in February of this year, so he needs to get a move on. But I suspect that he's probably going to plateau around European level. I think European level is going to be his ceiling. He might not even make it there. Who knows? But I can't see him going on to world honors. Not at least. Like, maybe he can win. I don't know, WBA regular. But in the words of James Toney, we don't even count that. So, but yeah, Fraser Clark. Yeah, I mean, I'll carry on watching, but I don't think it's. I don't think it's gonna go that far. I'll say that. Right. Going for coming up to 45 minutes. Probably going to go for another 15. Round it up to an hour or something, and then we'll top it off there. So yeah, what boxing have we got this weekend, people? Let's have a look. You know what? I'm going to have a little rant. Don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm just going to let you guys know. I hate with a passion BoxRec's new layout, because I go onto the homepage and all I can see is boxing for Friday, the 11th of November. I don't like that. I want to see major fights coming this weekend and the weekend after and the weekend after and the weekend after, like it used to be. Because I can check the schedule, but then, all right, 5-star ranked fights. Yeah, and then I put in 5-star rank specifically, and then I get wait, hold on, lower it down to 4. Okay, that's better. Yeah, start to see a bit more. But we'll come back to that. Joe, what did you make of the Eubank Senior interview? He seemed very mentally unwell to me. Yeah, I haven't seen the interview in its entirety. I've seen clips. I've seen like little highlights that people have posted. Before that interview was published, like released on the is it this guy named Rob Moore? Is that his name? On his YouTube channel. I'd seen a video posted on Hatman's Element, which was it was so strange. It was this hall of people. It looked like some dining hall, and Chris Eubank Senior was walking through the door with that massive leathery coat on, that fur-lined leather coat, and that weird cane. You can't even call it a cane. It was like some bit of rebar. Um, and of course, sheriff's badge. Ooh, uh, yeah, an actual sheriff's badge, not the euphemism sheriff badge. Um, and he was, he was like not dancing, but he was like dancing, but he looked like he was convulsing. And there's like Titanium by Sia playing. It was just bizarre. Um, what I might do, I might Actually, no, that's kind of bad. No, you guys might be able to find it on YouTube. I was going to say I might download the video and post it, but I don't want to do that because it is very strange. And yeah, Joe, I agree. I think he's kind of gone over the edge a little bit. Eubank scene has always been eccentric, but I think he's going mad potentially. Um, it's very theatrical. It's very surreal almost. It's just bizarre. It's so strange. But no, I haven't seen the interview in its entirety. Um, I know the video you mean. Watch the man sitting at the table as Eubank passes by. Yeah, that's the one. So the guy is like using his front-facing camera almost like he's taking a selfie. He's filming over his own shoulder. That's the one. And it's just, I was like, what? Because I saw the thumbnail for that video, and I was like, oh, let's have a look at Eubank kind of up to his old tricks, being the like mad as a box of frogs. And I was like, I'm not sure how I feel after watching that. I feel like I should apologize for watching the whole thing because it's like insensitive. It was just so strange. And Eubank's done stuff like that before. I remember this. There was this one video which I try and find it. This was from years ago. Um, all right, I don't want to find all tastes and ages, so please erase yourself. Okay. Um, uh, yeah, this video, I think it was from like 2015 or 14, 15, 16. And it was, I don't know whether it was like Oxford Uni or something. And there was like a small lecture going on. And these uni students and lecturers, they were singing Kumbaya. And Eubank Senior is in the center of this circle while people are singing, and he's like body popping and dancing, and he's in his crisp suit, got his Louis Vuitton whatever, and it was just this guy is really something. And he can be a bit quirky and enjoy a dance and be a bit of a uh, an off key guy, whereas now it's just like, should we call the men in the white van to come and get this guy because it's it's getting a bit much, I think. But that's I shouldn't really joke about that to be honest. But it's yeah, it's a bit odd. Someone should keep a close eye on him. Hatman made a good point actually in his video because he was talking about we know Eubank Senior is a an eccentric character. He's also he likes the limelight. So could that, his natural eccentric personality, his desire to always be the center of attention, but also the damage he's accumulated over the course of his career, because he had a long career and he took some shellackings. Is he kind of having a bit of a phase where the cracks are starting to show in the old noggin, and maybe it's resulting in some strange behavior? But yeah, nobody really knows. Only the people closest to him, and maybe even they could be just as stumped as we are. Felix says, "Hit the like, people." Yeah, look, not my words. They're Felix's. He's instructing you to hit the like button. So if you would kindly, be greatly appreciated. Joe, I saw that one too. That was funny though. The latest one was just sad and stuff. Yeah, exactly that. The first one, like you could see that Eubank Senior was just being silly, playing up to the crowd, having a little bit of a dance. But this last one was just like, what is going on? Yeah, yeah. It's strange, but that's what happens. You're dealing with some very extreme characters in boxing, and they're dealing with actual trauma to their brains, so they're bound to do strange things. Like a lot of people have suspected that Amir Khan has been dealing with CTE and how it's influenced his behavior, because he's been in some scandals recently. I'm not going to go into details because the old algorithm, but um, yeah, Amir Khan, talk about off key. I find Amir Khan immensely entertaining, especially in the lead up to the Brook fight. That was hilarious. That was absolutely hilarious. But when you look at his behavior, it's kind of like, Amir, maybe you should have a scan. And yeah, it's these things happen. It's not really a laughing matter, but if you don't laugh, you'll cry. That's what I say. G the PT, money is my beat. Uh, is that what Eubank Senior said? I feel like I've heard a couple of quotes from that interview, and they were all very. I don't know what's the word to describe them. He seemed quite defiant from what I saw in that interview, like he was trying to make a statement. I don't know why, but yeah, Eubank Senior, he's a piece of work, isn't he? Khan was trolling Brook like a pro. Yeah, oh, that was funny. That was so funny. Um, just that I think it was maybe the final press conference before the fight. I was replaying parts, like when obviously Khan brought up that video about Dominic Ingle drinking Kell Brook's sweat, which is disgusting. That's not banter. That's not lads on tour. Let's do crazy whatever. That's just disgusting. Um, and then Khan was, oh, Dom, what are you going to drink next? Kind of thing. That was hilarious. And then, um, and then he brought up the whole, oh, Kell Brook said he's gonna, he's gonna smash my poppadom chin. Is that a racial remark? And this is really crass, like not cringy, but like it's just low. But it was so funny. It was so low quality. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that build up, because it wasn't forced. You can tell these guys don't like each other, or they didn't like each other. But it was always, over the years, it was Amir Khan he always did it with like tongue in cheek and a bit of a twinkle in his eye, whereas Kell Brook would bite. He just couldn't resist. He just had to, and it just made it such an entertaining double act. The fight came way too late. Obviously, I'm not gonna dispute that, but it was kind of worth it in the end. I feel like it was worth it in the end, because I always picked Brook to beat Khan anyway. I never saw Khan as a threat for Brook. I just felt stylistically, um, it just was a bad matchup for Khan. And then when the fight was made earlier this year, I was thinking, okay, I think Brook has slipped sufficiently where Khan could be dangerous, but I was still picking Brook. So in my eyes, when they fought earlier this year, that was Khan's best chance to beat Brook, and he still lost. But that's it's in the history books now. Yeah, that was an entertaining build-up. Very entertaining. All right, people. Last few minutes. I guess, as I said, I was going to round this up for about an hour long. So we're approaching that. Any last bits you guys want to talk about? This weekend's boxing. Not that there's very much. There's some boxing tomorrow. Sonny Edwards versus Felix Alvarado. Janibek Alim Khanala versus Denzel Bentley on, Saturday, Las Vegas. Big step up for Denzel. That's obviously for the WBO middleweight title. It's kind of strange. I thought Janibek was already elevated, but he's not recognized as a champion. Let's check the WBO rankings because I even did a video because it said that he'd been elevated. But let's have a butcher's, shall we? Right, bear with me. Yeah, so on the WBO website, he's recognized as the champion, but on BoxRec he isn't. Strange. Puddin, Jim, 8. Good to have you here, my friends, even though we're coming to an end. Andrew Tate versus Jake Paul could be on next year. I'd watch it. Yeah, why not? You know, you got a former kickboxer who, you know, Andrew Tate, he is what he is. I don't have a problem with Andrew Tate. He's a fighting man. But I've watched some of his fights, and I'm no kickboxing expert, but it's like, yeah, kickboxing. It's good that he had other avenues. I'll say that. Against Jake Paul, who inexperienced but has some potential. I'd watch it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've seen like the pictures of them together and facing off and whatnot. Uh, interesting, interesting. I'm sure it's going to happen before uh, Crawford versus Spence happens, which is a sad state of affairs. Felix, what's going on with Andrade? Where should he go next? I don't know. I really don't know. Andrade seems to be doing, you know, a lot of talking from the sidelines, and I just don't know. You know, it doesn't help that people aren't particularly keen on fighting him, but if people aren't keen on fighting you, you have to just come to a compromise because it's either you fight or you don't fight. That's the situation that Andrade's in. So if you have to bend over backwards a little bit, it's either your pride and your ego or your boxing career being active and actually going out and fighting. Um, he didn't seem particularly keen on fighting Janibek. And some people say, oh, but that's because Janibek didn't offer enough money. And look, I get that, but you need to fight. Like, you have no other options, really. So I don't know what's going on with Andrade. Clearly, DAZN can't do that much of a. You know, they're not doing a great job. They're not doing massively better than who was Andrade with before when he was fighting on HBO. Can't remember. But yeah, he's just a hard sell, Andrade. But it's unfortunate. I don't see him as like, oh, he's the best middleweight out there. I think he's a good middleweight, but um, it's it's one of those things, you know. As I say, if you can't get fights, you have to start. You have to be willing to compromise a little bit. It's trade off. Pudding Jim, yeah. So just before you joined, we were talking about the Chris Eubank interview. I didn't see the whole thing. I've just seen highlights and snippets of it, so I can't really give a full-on review of it. But it was very strange. A lot of the things he was saying, and not just what he was saying, but the way he was saying them. Like, he was being even more theatrical than usual. It's not a good look. It's a little bit concerning, to be honest. But you know, it's down to the people near him to guide him and look after him. Um, so you know, it's very strange. It's a little bit sad, as Joe said earlier, like because it's if he is losing his marbles, watching someone have that kind of descent, it's never pleasant. I'll say that. But is Eubank Senior slowly losing it? Maybe. I don't know. Um, it's it's hard to know. In a lot of the time, you don't realize the full extent of something until it's happened already. But yeah, I didn't see the whole thing, so I can't really give like a definitive review of it. All right, last one. Joe, the middleweight division is very weak. Andrade could rule it if he felt motivated. Uh, is middleweight division weak? It's not strong, but I think it's okay. But I still don't even see that. I think Andrade. mm, I wouldn't pick him confidently against the top guys at middleweight, to be honest. Like Golovkin, uh, Jamal Charlo. Who else is there? Um, I've never been entirely sold on Andrade, and I don't think the inactivity helps him at all. But I mean, who knows? Uh, if I was wrong, it wouldn't surprise me that much. But I just don't see it. I don't really see it. But all right, guys, it is just gone 9 o'clock. We've gone for just over an hour. It's been a quiet one, but I've, as always, had a good time chatting to you guys. Not sure when I'm going to do another live stream. Very busy these days, but we'll catch up soon. And but for now, have a good Friday tomorrow, wherever you are in the world. Have a good weekend, and yeah, until the next one, take it easy, people. And thanks for joining me for another evening once again. Be sure to see you soon.